In the night her husband wired my alibi. I make numbers behave when people don't. That's the easiest way to explain forensic accounting without making everyone at the table hate me. Foundations call when their donors turn into weather. CEOs call when they want to look surprised by the storm. I'm good at turning ledgers back into facts, and better at letting the right facts go quiet. That's how I met Alma. The charity was called Clear Rivers, which is the sort of name that dares the universe to make it muddy. They were throwing a gala at the Harkness Hotel, a limestone wedding cake with a taste for scandals that don't stain. The marquee donor, Leon Varga, had built an empire out of payment rails and plausible deniability. He was also married to Alma, who used to anchor late-night radio and had the kind of voice that made traffic reports sound like mercy. I'd been hired by the foundation's director to audit in advance, which is the way cautious people say, please tell me what I already fear. I arrived 2 days early, in a lobby that smelled like peonies and inheritance, and found Alma perched on the edge of a velvet sofa, tapping a fountain pen against a check as if deciding which zero was lying. "You must be Daniel," she said without standing, as if we'd been mid-conversation for years. "The man who makes money tell the truth without raising his voice." "I try to be persuasive," I said. "Persuasion is just math with posture," she said, signing her name with a flourish that almost hid the tremor. "Leon says you're a formality. I say you're an exit." She rose and motioned toward the elevators. I followed, because I always follow the person who wants the fire put out the most. In the suite, the drapes had learned how to be important. She poured sparkling water like a complicated apology and slid a folder across the table. Inside were invoices and pledges, and a single page of wire instructions with a line that did not belong. A routing number in the Cayman Islands, tucked among the domestic stream like a wolf in wool. "Someone is siphoning," I said. "Someone is pretending to be generous in public and efficient in private," she said, not blinking. "I need you to give me something cleaner than revenge." "Why me?" I asked. "Because people don't hand you knives without wanting to see how you hold them." "Because you weren't recommended by Leon," she said. "And because you look like a man who can be tempted and still say no." She smiled then, quick and unsentimental, and the room shifted its weight like a dancer deciding which foot to trust. I read the numbers again. They didn't change. "Tonight," she said, "there's a pre-gala cocktail for the board in the rooftop lounge. Leon will arrive late on purpose. His fixer, Nico, will arrive on time to prove he can tell a clock to heel. In Nico's breast pocket there will be a thumb drive inside a business card case, the donor list, adjusted to keep certain lunches friendly. Leon will offer it to the director as a courtesy. The director will pretend not to notice the deletions. I want that drive before the pretending happens." "And if I say no?" I asked. "You'll still have to write the report," she said. "It will still say the river is muddy. The only difference is whether I step into it on my terms or his." She stepped closer, not seduction, not performance, proximity as an instrument. Up close, the perfume was bitter orange and a memory of smoke. "Please," she said, and it lived exactly between professional and prayer. "I have a rule about clients: no heat that could make the work stupid. I've broken it more than once and learned to call the scars experience." I nodded because she'd asked the way people who are finished being careful ask. The rooftop lounge was built to convince the sky it had competitors. Politicians rehearsed sincerity against the sunset. The foundation director beamed like a hostage in a friendly country. I found a spot near the bar where the room's currents would carry me without asking my name. Nico arrived in a suit that had been practiced on a better man. He had the posture of someone who keeps knives where kindness should go. He greeted the director with a bow too exact to be respect. In his pocket, the glint of a silver case winked like treason with a manicure. Alma took a lap, gathering hellos like receipts, and docked herself at my elbow long enough to make it look like she was requesting a better angle for the skyline. 2 minutes, she murmured. He'll pass it, she'll pocket it, I'll distract. Your left hand is better than your right. I can tell by how you hold tension in your jaw. Is that a radio trick? I asked. It's a woman trick, she said and glided away. Leon arrived late, of course, with the ease of a man who thinks clocks adore him. He kissed Alma's cheek lightly, as if apologizing to an audience she couldn't see, and shook Nico's hand like he was touching money-made flesh. The director performed delight. Nico produced the case with a flourish, and I felt the room lean. Alma knocked a champagne flute off a waiter's tray with the precision of a sniper. It shattered like punctuation. Heads turned. In that breath, I stepped forward, let the director bump me, let the case fall into my palm as if it had always been going there. I slid it under the cocktail napkins and passed the director a decoy, an identical case I'd prepared with a gift card to a bookstore and the purity of my conscience. She didn't notice. She never does until the board minutes are typed, and the donors have left their bravado with the valet. Alma was already laughing at herself, a small graceful loss to keep larger ones at bay. Leon's smile thinned in a way that suggested the hallway would hear about this later. Nico's eyes counted the room like a ledger learning subtraction. I left early with nothing to declare and the weight of something that would change the night. In my room, I opened the case and slid the drive into a laptop that had never met a cloud. The file tree bloomed with familiar sins. I copied it to a clean stick I kept for grudges and put the original in a hotel envelope with the housekeeping slip, wrote the number of a room 2 floors above, and tucked it into the maid's cart when she wasn't looking. If Nico retraced his steps, he'd find it migrating back toward him with plausible innocence. If he didn't, the river might carry it further. Either way, my hands would be emptier when anyone came to look. Alma knocked 10 minutes later, as if we'd agreed to it. She stepped in without asking and closed the door with the quiet that belongs to people who have practiced being careful. She held out her wrist. "Help," she said, which is the most erotic word when it's about jewelry and not salvation. The bracelet clasp had decided to hate her. I fixed it because my hands are good at obedient metal. When my thumb brushed her pulse, she didn't move away. We stood in that small corridor of breath where you remember that heat is both proof and problem. I stepped back first. Her smile said thank you, and I know why. "How bad is it?" she asked, meaning the files, not our proximity. "Efficient," I said, disguised as generosity. The offshore routing is only for the education initiative in District 7. Everything else laundered through domestic shells that sound like trees. "Trees burn," she said. "Rivers drown." "Tomorrow," I said, "we can make everyone stand on the bank and look." She leaned against the desk, the lamplight turning her hair into soft arguments. "Tomorrow, Leon will wire the foundation 7 figures before dessert," she said. "He'll call it a bridge to make the board walk across. He will use your report to say he wants to be better than his advisors. Then he'll fire Nico in a room without windows and hire someone with a softer jaw to do the same job." "You know exactly how this plays," I said. "I've been the understudy for the lead in his life for 6 years," she said. "One day I looked up and realized the part he hired me for wasn't the one I rehearsed." "What part did you rehearse?" I asked. "The one where telling the truth makes you interesting," she said, and then laughed at herself, soft and unkind. I shouldn't have touched her face. I did. Only the jawline and acknowledgement, not a claim. She closed her eyes and breathed once into my palm, the kind of breath you give someone who keeps their hands steady for a living. We didn't kiss. Not then. She took back her bracelet like it was a decision and left with dignity trailing like a silk ribbon. The gala behaved like money with a conscience. Strings and speeches. Lights that flatter. Leon in a tuxedo that pretended to be humble. Alma in midnight silk with a neckline that supervised attention and told it where to sit. The director thanked the donors as if she owed them a childhood. When dessert arrived, Leon did what she'd predicted, announced a wire in a voice that had already practiced landing the applause. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a text from an unknown number, missing anything. N. I wrote back, found a library card. Thanks, he didn't reply. The room spun on, ritual as anesthesia. The auction began with vintage wine and the chance to name a canoe. Then came the surprise lot, a private dinner with Leon and Alma, marketed as wisdom with dessert. The bids jumped like stock taking cues from rumor. Alma held her smile like a violin holds a note. Before we continue, she said, stepping forward. The room quieted out of curiosity and hunger. I'd like to add something to the menu, transparency. She nodded at the projection behind her. My report blinked onto the screen, not the part about the offshore, not yet, the part about the domestic shells and the double-counted pledges. She circled one entry in red, a donation that had been announced twice, once as cash, once as a promise. This is my fault, she said, and the word "my" did something to Leon's face he didn't know how to hide. I forgot which story we were telling, so I'm telling this one. We're going to return everything that isn't what we said it was. We're going to take the river out for coffee and ask how it likes to be treated. And if anyone here would prefer more efficient water, the door, over there. People glanced at one another in the way money glances, polite, predatory. Leon clapped first, the only move left that didn't involve firing someone in front of dessert. The room followed because rooms do. I watched Nico watch me watch him. He smiled with the gentleness of a man writing a shopping list on someone's back. After, in a service corridor that smelled like flowers trying to forget they were dying, he found me. You returned the case, he said, and not the copy. What copy? I said. I'm an auditor, not a magician. You're a man who knows where to stand when a room is choosing its hero, he said. You think the wife is the hero. I think the river should be, I said. She's just the only one with a microphone that isn't for sale. He stepped close enough for me to smell the cologne that tries to pass for character. Leon wired the foundation, he said, to your escrow. That's the account you used to receive retainers, yes. Very professional, very careful. If that wire is mislabeled in a headline, it becomes your alibi and your noose. It took me a second to feel the shape of what he'd done. He'd piggybacked Leon's bridge into my professional account, where I hold funds for clients briefly while they sign contracts. It was legal, barely, and poisonous, entirely. Fix it, I said. I already did, he said. The reversal will process at midnight, and the only record will be a whisper your report can outshout. But now you owe me a favor. We both know how these nights work. He patted my shoulder like a dog and left me with the smell of his meritocracy. I found Alma in the coach room, not getting her coat. She was standing perfectly still, arms folded, like a woman remembering how to be a question nobody else gets to answer. He wired to my escrow, I said. She didn't flinch. Of course he did. His favorite game is teaching other people how expensive it is to be near him. Nico reversed it, I said. The favor was the point. Let me pay you, she said. You did, I said, and only then realized I meant the way she told the room about the shells without turning it into a spectacle. We're not done, I added. There's another account, District 7, offshore. He'll say it's a mistake by a junior. He'll say you didn't know. He'll make sure there's just enough to deny. We need more than the drive. She unpinned her hair, gathered it again, and fastened it with a simple tortoiseshell comb. Come upstairs, she said. I'll show you where he keeps the things he doesn't like to forget. In the suite, the lights were low, the river candles in the window doubled by the glass. She opened the closet safe with a combination that didn't belong to numbers so much as to habit. Behind the obvious trays lay a velvet pocket. Inside, a SIM card wrapped in tissue and a folded list of 5 names. Next to each name, a number and a single initial. The third was mine. Insurance, she said, not looking at me. For whom? I asked. Against whomever he's in the room with, she said. We sat on the edge of the bed, 2 people holding very small objects that could make very large messes. The moment was too tender for caution and too dangerous for desire. I put my hand over hers. She turned her palm and laced our fingers, and that became the answer to a question neither of us had asked aloud. We kissed then, slow, certain, held tight in the place where heat learns patience. It was the kind of kiss that knows bodies are honest and timing is political. Hands at shoulders, at jawlines, at the small of her back where fabric remembers better than skin. We did nothing a censor could indict and everything a heart takes to trial later. Later, she whispered against my mouth, and we both nodded, because later was a country we'd visa for if the border ever relaxed. I spent the rest of the night turning the list and the SIM into an extraction plan that wouldn't leave her stranded. At dawn, I sent a packet to a reporter who doesn't trade favors for access, with a note that said, "The river is the subject, the men are scenery, the woman is not your headline." At noon, the board announced an independent review with names that frightened Leon's lawyer just enough to sound sincere. At 3, the District 7 account was closed by its bank for irregularities and reopened in a domestic credit union, whose board had teenagers and not enough patience for poetry. Leon called me that evening from a number that didn't want to be traced. "You are good at creating narratives," he said. "Almost as good as my wife." "I don't create," I said. "I curate." "Curators end up in footnotes," he said. "Be careful where you place yourself in my bibliography." "Be careful where you place your money," I said. He laughed the way men laugh at a child who has picked up a glass to feel heavy. "Tell Alma," he said, voice turning to stone wrapped in silk, "that I love her enough to make her the villain if she wants to be the hero." "She doesn't want to be either," I said. "She wants to be herself." "Then she'll be bored," he said and hung up. We didn't get a clean ending. We got the kind adults earn. The review found what it was hired to find and something it wasn't, and the river got more money with fewer strings. Donors learned to like receipts. Nico started showing up places with a smaller smile. Leon took his victory lap on a different track. The foundation director learned to read finer print. Alma left him. She did it quietly, like a woman closing a book she enjoyed until she didn't. She moved into an apartment with windows that faced something that wasn't skyline and started a podcast about public math, how money moves and why women know it first. When we see each other, it's never where people who gossip spend their time. We separate heat from history and call it respect. Sometimes she threads her fingers into mine for the length of a crosswalk light and lets go at the curb like a promise kept. Sometimes I touch the inside of her wrist where that first apology fits and say nothing at all. If you need heroics, you won't find them here. I'm a man who told the truth about numbers for a woman who already knew it, and I didn't let my want ruin the work. He wired my alibi to make me complicit. I rewired the night so the river didn't have to learn our names. And when the city breathes like it's practice, and the hotel lobby smells like peonies and inheritance, I think of the moment she asked for help with the bracelet, and how all the locks in the world mean nothing if the person with the key doesn't believe they deserve to open the door.